Greetings and salutations, everyone. You're listening to Mama Rue's Ancestral Musings. This is a podcast about all things Blackness with an ancestral point of view. And I am here post Walking the Dikenga 2019. I don't even know what day it is today because I am still on a Walking the Dikenga high. Woo, baby. When I tell you, that was some powerful stuff going on this past weekend. Now, I already get a spiritual high just going before my ancestral altar regularly, okay? I always leave it, feeling a certain kind of way. But, man, nothing can compare to what I felt this past weekend. And getting some of the feedback from the attendees, it's mutual, okay? So I'm just going to give you guys a quick little run through of what the event was about. So we gathered on day one this past Saturday in a part of Chicago that is the Dan Ryan Woods, okay? Huge forest preserve in Chicago, and it has a couple of places within it that are special to me with regard to communicating with the spirits of the woods. There's one particular place that I go to at the start of anything I do in the woods, and I introduced the attendees to those spirits, okay? I just want to make a little note that a week prior, my husband and I did go to those sections of the woods and basically prepare for, the event, because I want everything to go as smoothly as possible. So there were just certain things that we did in anticipation of the event. I'm not keeping those secret from the people in the group for Walking the Dikenga. We will go over those things at a later date, okay? But we made special preparations and, gave blessings to the spirits and got the green light, to bring others in and be able to communicate with the spirits of the woods and gather things on their behalf and the behalf of the ancestors, all right? So that was all kind of pre-planned and pre-done ahead of the event. We met up on Saturday. We had a wonderful opening prayer. And as I've mentioned before in previous episodes and on my social media, before you do any spiritual work, it is important to honor the original custodians of this land, okay? That's a matter of respect and homage because they were the original custodians, all right? They're the ones who've been here for thousands of years taking care of this land, all right? So we have to honor and respect them before we do anything else. So that was done, okay? And then we opened up an ancestral prayer and we called in the forces of the divine natural woods, all right? We then proceeded to go to a very sacred spot to acknowledge a very important part of Hoodoo culture that happened to be, in a spot in those woods. And attendees were instructed on why it was important and what they might experience. When you know that you've made that proper connection, you have a visceral reaction. Sometimes for some people, even myself, it can sometimes be a visible thing to witness, right? But for the most part, it's a visceral feeling, all right? It's something that you experience. That's why I tend to side-eye people who call themselves teaching Hoodoo things exclusively online. How do you even know if your students are experiencing certain spiritual phenomena that must occur, okay? In order to do this work and do it well and successfully, you have to call up power, right? And that power has to be funneled into, the work that you are doing. And so if you're just teaching people exclusively online, you have no way of assessing that in your students. You can't feel it. Okay. Anyway, that's not to say that, certain parts of this tradition can't be taught that way. They absolutely can. All right? They absolutely can. But the baseline foundational part, the harnessing of the power, the communication of the experience, getting the permissions, getting the green light, knowing that you've got the blessings. That's not something that just can be taught in a book or on a YouTube video or on a webinar, right? It has to be experienced in real time in the actual places of power and the special places of spirit. So that was important. And once we, were able to do that, we then proceeded to another part of the woods where we kind of went against the program. I had a program, all laid out and everything, but we kind of did things out of order because there were certain situations, unbeknownst to us, our planning committee. There was a huge family reunion going on in that area, but it was big enough to accommodate us both. At one point, they sent a police officer to kick us out, But, we took care of that. The ancestors took care of it all right? And everything went smoothly. We just went a little out of order. So what we did was, once we got to that part that is at the entrance of the nature trails, we just made camp there and broke for lunch. We had our picnic. Special shout out to my niece Karinka and special shout out to Sister Tamika for providing the food for our picnic lunch for day one. And after that, we did a little quiz game. Okay, the committee made up a nice little box of prizes to hand out to whoever answered our quiz questions correctly. So we, divided everybody up into 3 different teams, 3 different groups, and it was a lot of fun. The questions weren't that difficult, and it wasn't that many, but everybody got prizes. Nobody walked away without a prize. And after that, we went into the root boxes. Okay, I had specially packed root kits or root boxes for all the attendees who were there. And everybody, opened up their boxes, and I went over every item that was therein, okay? And we discussed everything and how they're used and what you can do with it, and, and I'm very mindful that people generally, not everybody has the same ancestry as I do, right? People come from different places and they have different ways of doing things. So I'm always mindful of that. So when I teach things, I always give some baseline stuff, just baseline informational things, but I always leave room for individuals to add their own personal juju into the work. That's just how I get down, because I can't just assume that everybody's got the same people, Everybody comes from different types of people, different cultures, different regions of the country have, specific ways of doing things. And I want people to honor that and celebrate that and keep it going for their families and for their ancestors. Okay? Take it and make it your own. So after we went through everything, the roots that were included, the herbs that were included, and all the other little things, we went on to construct one of the more popular spiritual tools of Hoodoo, and that is the mojo bag. Okay? We went on to, make our mojos. Mojos were then activated and blessed, baptized, personalized. And after we did that part, we proceeded to go on and do our nature walk. And that almost didn't happen because I knew that, since the police had gotten involved, that the other people on the other side of the park were kind of anxious for us to leave. And I was really tired. I only had like a couple hours sleep the night before, and it was getting late, and the bugs were acting up, but the spirit was like, nah, y'all got to finish this. So we did. And I was so glad that I got outvoted, to continue on, because it was a very significant part of the program, and I don't think, it wouldn't have been shut down no matter what I said. I had to go on. That's why people were there, right? So we did our nature walk. Attendees were instructed to harvest plants that spoke to them, okay? Basically, you get pulled to something. It's almost like everything else just fades away, but that one thing, and you just get kind of focused in on that thing. That's how you know that plant is calling you. The focus was on plants for healing and blessing and uncrossing, and it didn't matter if attendees or even me knew the identity of the plants, okay? Because that's my own personal experience. I've shared with you guys before on my podcast about how I was fixated on having a specific plant to help someone with a specific situation, and I was freaking out because they needed it right away, and the specific plant I wanted was on back order with all these different places, and I contacted other root workers and they didn't have any. And my mother was the one that told me, you need to go outside and just get still and see what speaks to you. And I did that. And without knowing the identity of the plant that spoke to me, I just went for it, used it in the work, gave it to the client, and they had success. Okay? So it didn't really matter. But sometimes it's good to know the identities of plants when it comes to medicine, the medicinal qualities. Yeah, you got to know. For example, one of the sisters in the group was drawn to pokeweed. Okay? And I let her know, that's something that our people used to eat, but only when the plant was young. The leaves are young, they ate them like greens, right? But when the plant matures, the leaves can be a little poisonous, and the berries are especially poisonous. But she was still drawn to that plant. Okay? It was calling her. Some folks use that in uncrossing works, so it all made sense. Why she wanted that pokeweed. But for medicinal purposes, yes, it is very important to understand the qualities of the plants, their pharmacology, their medicinal properties, and on like that, because we're not trying to make people sick. We're trying to heal folks, right? Root doctoring. That's where that comes in. You must know what these plants do to the human body, right? If they're beneficial or if they're poisonous. But when it comes to spiritually working with plants, you go to what calls you. Because if you have an intention, those are the plants that are going to respond to your intention. And our intention was to gather plants to help us with our healing ceremony for ourselves and our ancestors on day 2. We found some very remarkable things on our nature walk. I was drawn to a plant that I'd never seen before. I don't know what the plant is. I just know it spoke to me, and I harvested it, gave my thanks, and went on. And I wasn't drawn to anything else. Okay? I don't know the identities of everything growing. For example, during the live stream, I kept focusing on these really luscious, beautiful, big leaf foliage type plants. And one of the attendees in the live stream said, "Oh, that's burdock." And I appreciated that because I'm never called to work with it. I'm aware that it's used in hoodoo in some capacity or another, but I've never been drawn to actually working with it in any way. So now I know, I know what it is this time. So there were a lot of things there that I just don't know. And there were some things in there that I am very familiar with. So I made it my business to, point these things out and to tell the attendees, this is what this is. Spiritually, you can use it this way. Medicinally, you can use it that way. And I think one of the shining stars of that moment was being able to gather lightning struck wood. Okay. A few of us were able to appreciate that, and how we use it in Hoodoo tradition and everything like that, because it isn't that easy. It's easier for some people to get a hold of, and it's a little bit harder for others. All right, but the forest blessed us that day, and several attendees were able to take a piece of that home. And I explained it. This is like a bomb. You want to protect yourself against an enemy, you can use a handgun, but this here is like an anti-aircraft weapon. You know what I'm saying? So you got to be careful using this stuff. It's for big things, But anyway, it was just the energy of that part of my city. It's just special. It was very electric. I was grateful to those that brought their small children to the event, because it's just so special when our youth can be a part of nature in any form, in any capacity. It was just great, to have their energy and their spirits there. And I know the forest really appreciated that they were there as well. So after we gathered our plants, because the group that I was walking with, because we kind of split up into groups, and the group I was walking with, we were kind of bringing up the rear. So when we finally made it back to our campsite, I noticed that all of our things had been packed up and put away. And a few people had already left that day. And I'm like, oh no, we're not even done. I was supposed to demonstrate what to do with those plants, in preparation for the next day's ceremony. But it's okay. It worked out. I was able to explain it on one of the live streams for the group so that everybody could be aware of, what they needed to do with their plants ahead of the next day. And then we broke for the evening and went to our respective places. Couldn't sleep that night either, y'all. Couldn't sleep that. I think for the weekend, I had a total of 6 hours of sleep. So I was just really tired physically, but at the same time wired, if that makes any sense. So Sunday, we kind of got off to a little bit of a late start, and at the same time, a few things were forgotten, and things didn't, exactly go as planned due to, the late start and kind of hustling and bustling. Sister Juju Bay was supposed to give a presentation on Hoodoo, what it's like to be Hoodoo in 21st century. Basically speaking, to the younger Hoodoo people. And my niece Karinka was supposed to follow that with song, because she's a singer, beautiful singer. And she was going to do a nice little musical performance for us. And that neither one of those things happened. But it was okay. It was fine. We got together and opened it up with an ancestral prayer. And the highlight of that ancestral prayer, and I did share a little clip of that on social media, was to recognize that as we stood there in that moment, we were going to do something on behalf of our ancestors that they were made to stop doing. And that was call the names of their gods. And I called the names, and it was just a few, because I know that there are many, many more than the few that I specifically, called. Okay? But people just need to be mindful that we don't belong to just one ethnic group or cultural group of West Africans and West Central Africans. We have several groups in our bloodline. Okay? And each of those groups have their own names for the divine creator. They were made to forget. But did they really forget? No, they didn't. I made it a point to say they didn't forget. They had their tongues silenced. But we're going to stand here and be their tongues. Because ain't nobody waiting to punish us for it. Ain't nobody waiting to beat us or kill us for it. That's what they did to our ancestors for it. Our ancestors have prayed for us to do what we did on that day, and to recognize and lay claim and witness to the things that were beaten out of them. Okay? So we were witnesses. One of the things that I instructed to the attendees was to draw a line, okay, an imaginary line down the centers of their selves. And on one half, that's them and who they are in this present moment, space and time. But allow the other half to be a place where the ancestors can come and be with us across space and across time. Okay? And that was what took place on day 2, the following Sunday. We gathered together along the lakefront here in Chicago. We did our opening prayer. And because of the energy, like I said, we kind of bypassed the presentation from Jujube and the song from Karinka, and we just we did our little promenade over to the shore. And there was a drummer that was invited to come and do drumming for us, and he could not make it, but it was fine. My husband and my spiritual sister, Sister Oya, they picked up the slack. Attendees also had access to, different percussive instruments. We had tambourines, we had shekeres, and other rhythm-making percussive instruments. And we kept that beat going because that's a very important part of raising the energy of the Dikenga, okay? And so we made our way to the shore. We put our spiritual healing waters in the center, and we ambulated around in a counterclockwise fashion while, keeping that rhythm going and raising that energy. And once the spirit let me know, the energy is sufficient, you're now ready to proceed to the ceremony. We took our waters, we lined up along that shore, along the waves, and we began to heal our ancestors and ourselves, all that generational trauma. Okay, things that have been characterized by social scientists, in particular Joy Degree, as post-traumatic slave syndrome. All the things that Black folks, generation after generation, have been carrying, the trauma, the pain, the brokenheartedness, the fear, okay, dissolution, okay, because we always talk about the greatness of our ancestors and the power of our ancestors, but what good is that if we don't acknowledge their harrowing experiences that they had to deal with, things that other groups of people would have killed themselves over? Our ancestors were able to persist through all that bullshit, but it still gets passed down, okay? That trauma and that pain still gets passed down, and it manifests in ways that are very negative in the Black community, to the point where our people are pretty much characterized, looked down on, disrespected, and hated because it's that obvious, it's that palpable, okay? Because we do act out in certain ways as a result of carrying the psychic trauma in our bloodlines from our ancestors. So we made a promise to do away with it and to heal and to break generational curses and to allow our ancestors to be free of all of that. Okay? Now, there's a part during that event where the ancestors actually struck a few of us. All right? And I was kind of, hesitant to actually share that footage on my social media platforms because it was so raw and so pure and so sacred and so personal. It just didn't feel right. Now, if the group decides to say, hey, we are the consensus and we say go ahead and share that shit, then I will. But for now that hasn't happened, and so I won't. But I'll just say this: Since the line was, kind of long and I was on one end, I believe the first person to get struck was Juju Bay. And it was very profound. And it was sort of like just a domino effect from that point. And then several others did as well. And even me. And I managed to capture that on the live. Because I can't remember what happened. I can't remember what was said or anything. I just remember somebody held me up. Because that's what you do. When someone gets struck, you go and attend to them. And you guide them through the process safely. All right? And looking back on the footage, I saw that the person that had embraced me and held me up and, got me through it was my husband. Thank you, babe. But what we did in that moment is no different than what happens in churches all across Black America on Sunday, and other nights of the week. It's no different. If we had done Walking the Dikenga, the day 2, in some church, it would have been business as usual. All right? And that's what people really need to understand. The same thing we did, the same phenomena that we experience on Sunday happens in churches all across Black America. Getting struck or slain by the Spirit. Now, they call it the Holy Ghost, and that's fine. All right? The names and the labels are the only thing that are different. Okay, but those of us who know and know we know who and what that is. It's our ancestors. I've said before, you could never have ever heard of ambulating around a crossroads or a Dikenga. Most people aren't familiar with Dikenga. Okay, but if you sit in church, there'll be that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people that get up and start running around the congregation in a counterclockwise fashion. And what happens is they're building power and energy for everything in the middle. All right? That's why people sitting in the middle get struck and start hooting and hollering and gyrating and moaning and wailing and crying and shaking and falling out and all like that. So what happened on that shore was no different. People got struck. Now, some folks were a little reserved, but that's okay. If you've never done this before, if you've never experienced, letting the Spirit enter your physical body and just letting it take over, I can understand some hesitation and some reluctance, okay? Some people may not have been ready, and that is perfectly fine. It takes nothing away from them, all right? Even for those of us who were open to receive it, we know that wasn't the end all be all. Okay. We know that in one fell swoop in one event on one day, it wasn't enough to fully eradicate all of it. We're still carrying some of it, so that means we just have to keep doing it. Right? We got to keep doing it until we get to that point. All right. Because we're talking about how many generations of pain and trauma here. I didn't expect it to be all done away with, bundled up, binded up, and put into those waters to dissipate out into that body of water. I never would have anticipated that, and I wouldn't ever say that. And so those that were a little bit more reserved to it, that was just testimony to the fact that we got to keep it up. We got to keep doing it. Okay? But it was profound. It was so moving. It was so beautiful. The sharing that happened amongst the group was amazing. The ancestral shrine that we made was incredible. The food, my goodness. My niece made vegan collards and succotash for the feast. And my sister Tamika made some sweet potato pies. And my sister Oya made some smoked turkey neck collards and some black-eyed peas. And a neighbor of me and Randall's contributed some of her kick-ass potato salad. And Sister Oya made some really good cornbread as well. And so the feast was incredible. It was delicious. It was offered to our ancestors, and they accepted it. People came with other beautiful offerings and put them on the shrine in gratitude and honor of the ancestors, okay? And it was just simply amazing. like I said, I'm still feeling the high from that event. I haven't come down yet. I want people to understand something, though. There are people in our group, in our secret group, who are either initiated into other traditions or they are on the path toward initiation, including myself. I'm on the path toward initiation into a certain tradition. And right now I'm just a student. I don't have a time frame on my initiation. Some people do get those, when they get their readings. The Hoodoo says they have to initiate within a certain time frame. That wasn't the case for me. But, and then there are some people in the group who are not on that path at all. Okay? But what I want people who are in traditions to realize, whether they're in the group or not, is reclaiming the traditions of our Black American ancestors. Okay? Sometimes we're, met with a lot of confusion. Sometimes it's met with a lot of anger or frustration. I know a couple of years ago, there were some people in a specific tradition that were mocking me and making fun of me and getting mad at me even for even mentioning Bantu or even mentioning Congo, because they felt like, that was the basis of their tradition. And so since I wasn't initiated into their tradition, I had no right to speak on Bantu or Congo things. There are people, who might look at how we honor our ancestors in the Hoodoo tradition, and since they're already in another tradition, they're looking at it as, oh, you guys are just stealing, or you're appropriating, or you're copying, or whatever. And that's the wrong way to do an ancestor shrine or altar, or you're not supposed to put it there, or you can't use that, or you're supposed to use 9 glasses of water, you're supposed to put a white cloth on at all times, and blah, 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 because they're only speaking from their limited experience of somebody else's culture. Okay, I'm specifically talking about people like Black Americans who get into traditions that are not of their own cultural experience. All right? So they have these blinders on and this really narrow-minded point of view. So when they see something that looks familiar, well, there's a reason why it looks familiar, number one, because of our shared ancestors, okay? We might not speak Spanish, and we might not have had our ancestors enslaved by Catholics, but there are still commonalities to a lot of things that we do with the cultures that were enslaved by Spanish-speaking Catholics. Okay, we might not speak Brazilian Portuguese, and again, coming from a Catholic perspective, like they do, but there are still certain things that are familiar. Why? Because we share ancestors. A lot of people forget that. When they speak on diaspora, they leave us Black Americans out of the goddamn conversation. They forget those were our ancestors too. Okay? Not long ago, I was on Ancestry, and I'm looking at all my DNA relatives, and I had a huge number of Afro-Latino relatives, okay? And I was just tripping, because they're beautiful, and I'm just like, wow, I want to be able to reach out to them. I want to know, where they come from, who are their people, and what do they know about their ancestors, and blah, 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 But anyway, it's just like, we are like the bastard children of the diaspora. We're the bastard children of the ATRs. And right now I want to give a shout out to 2 spiritual sisters of mine, Hess Love and Toy Smith. They've both been posting about this recently. Hess wrote an article in racebaiter.com. Let me pull up that title. And the title of that article is Black Folks Have Always Partaken in African Traditional Religion, Even When We Didn't Know It. And that is the point, okay? And Sister Toya made a post, about our position in African traditional religions as Black American people, because a lot of people have a lot to say about it and it ain't nice. And she's basically like, listen, y'all gonna respect us. You can say what you want, but you're going to respect us. And I'm just paraphrasing the gist of her post. And that basically why I started this podcast, because it's like there's a lot of disrespect. It's not so much coming from the marketeers and the people, who want to relegate our spiritual practices and our magical practices to just a system of American folk magic, and just erase us and our ancestors all out the goddamn thing and exploit the fuck out of it. It's not just about them, it's about us too, our people and the people we share ancestors with. They all have something to say, something funky to say, where they feel like, they can look down on us and whatever, and disregard us and disrespect us and all like that. I'm pushing back on all that shit. And for Black Americans in particular, those who, get initiated into other cultures, right? Afro-Latino culture more specifically, please stop. If you see what Hoodoo people are doing with ancestral reverence or anything else, you don't have the wherewithal to check somebody and what they do in Hoodoo, baby. You don't get to tell them that's wrong because you're coming from a different tradition. And I don't care what the tradition is. You need to check yourself, because I'm going to tell you something right now. If you don't do it, your ancestors will. Oh, yeah. Big Mama and them will check you themselves. And I really hope that that is not the case, because if that happens, it's not going to feel too good. Okay? I'm so serious about that, because what they need to understand is this. Mass and them could not kill what can never die. Our spiritual practices as brought here from our African ancestors never died. Now, our people didn't call what they were doing an ancestral altar or shrine, because all the Africanity was beat out of their foremothers and fathers. That was a huge thing. Okay? Africanity was banned. The drums were taken. In some cases, the carvings of our ancestors and spiritual divine forces was banished, forbidden. Okay? A small segment of the Black American population did manage to keep it going. All right? But for the most part, all of those things that were obviously African could not be done. And that's something that persisted after slavery, with the exception of Hoodoo, okay? The practice of Hoodoo. Now, for the most part, practice of Hoodoo stayed hidden within the Black church. And that's why it is so, folks are just so oblivious to it. So when you go to a Black elder's home and you see all those pictures of, long transition relatives all grouped in one space. And you might not even just see photos. You might see some other things there too. Like, glasses or bottles of spirits, or little, flowers and plants and other little trinkets. Okay? That's the practice of ancestral reverence, but they did not call it that. All right? When they were in the church anointing people with oil and healing them, they didn't call what they were doing hoodoo. Hoodoo took on a negative connotation, especially with the folks who live around the border between Louisiana and Mississippi, where they call hoodoo and voodoo the same thing. They're still practicing it, but they ain't going to call it that. You go to Big Mama, hey, Big Mama, what you doing with that jar? Oh, baby, I'm just doing some of the Lord's work. Now you take your ass back outside and finish playing. Don't worry about what I'm doing over here. That's the experience for most of us, okay? That doesn't mean that they weren't doing the hoodoo work. They just didn't call it that. But this is a new day, y'all. I think some people who are critics and uncomfortable with what we're doing, they maybe need to pick up a damn dictionary and look up what the word reclamation means. Because today, there ain't no overseer or no master and missus coming around us watching what we're doing and beating us for it. Them days is long gone. Okay? Long gone. So why is it that we are just relegated to what we're doing as far as, going along with the marketeers as far as what hoodoo is, but we cannot use it to identify it as a people. We can't use it to identify our ancestors. Listen, our ancestors came from a multitude of different cultures and ethnicities. And when they landed on this land off them slave ships, we became a new people, our own unique tribe. It's called hoodoo. I don't care if you like it. I don't care if you love it. I don't care if you hate it. That's just the reality of it, okay? Hoodoo isn't just what we do. It's who we are as a people. A lot of folks don't like the word, but we're here to reclaim it and restore it to its truth. Restore it to its power. All right? Because, the time for ignorance and bullshit is over. It's over. All right? There's a lot of nonsense and, crap going on and all this stuff. It's basically anti-blackness is what it is. I don't care who it is. I don't care what color they are or how they identify. Anti-blackness is the same regardless of who is perpetuating it. So when folks look at what we're doing and try to dissect it out because of their own ignorance, you're practicing a form of anti-blackness. All right? And it's just sad to me that a lot of black folks are just skipping over this beautiful, rich, powerful tradition, don't want to take a part in its reclamation, don't want to take a part in its restoration, and they're just skipping over their own culture, their own ancestors, to go and celebrate somebody else's. All right? Any tradition that wants to initiate you but tells you to forget about your big mama and them, and their big mamas and them, and so on, 4 or 5 generations back, tells you can't honor them with the things that they will resonate with. All right? Like some good old gospel music, some good old-timey church music, like a plate of greens and neck bones. Like, that you can't do that. When you go to honor them, you got to give them some palm wine and some palm oil. You got to give them these Yoruba prayers or whatever, language. Come on, run. And I don't care who gets offended when I say that shit. Anybody that tells you to ignore the culture that you exist in, tells you to throw your own culture away in favor for somebody else's culture, to ignore your own ancestors and their likes and desires in favor of their ancestors' likes and desires, what resonates with them because that's their culture. If they tell you to, adopt their language, and there's nothing wrong with any of that. Because my thing is this. If you're Black American and you initiate into some other culture, African traditional religion, do you cease being Black? Because I'm pretty sure the answer is no. You do not stop being Black. You do not stop being Black American. Okay? And if you put down your own culture in favor of somebody else's, then baby, you're just a sad individual. I want no parts of you. Okay? Or if you're in a tradition that makes you do that or tells you to do that, you shouldn't want no parts of it. All right? It's disrespectful to them who lived and loved to make you possible to even have the day to make a choice like that in the first place. Don't disrespect your people. Don't disrespect your culture. Don't disrespect us who are restoring and reclaiming things and giving them back to the ancestors, things that were taken away from them. And that is what Walking the Dikenga is all about. All right? So that's all the time I have for you guys today. Please reach out to me. Give me your thoughts. Give me your feedback. If you disagree with what I'm saying, I especially want to hear from you. All right? You can comment on Spreaker if you want to. I can't reply, but I can read your comments. But if you'd like to start a dialogue, reach out to me on Facebook, where I'm Mina Wilson. You can also find me on Instagram at MamaRuHH, on Twitter at MamaRuHH, and you can find my blog on Tumblr, Mama Ru, and my YouTube channel is also Mama Ru. Or you can send me an email, contact@mamaru.com. If you have any questions about Walking the Dikenga and would like to know how you can get started and do your own event, reach out to me through email. Okay, you can reach me at my other social medias, but I prefer that you reach out to me at contact@mamaru.com, and I will get you started. All right? So as always, I'm going to love you and leave you, but I'm going to wish you love, peace, and powerful juju. Take care, everyone.